In the early morning hour, the miracle of life sparkled in the midst of a sun-drenched pasture in southern France. The splendor of life burst forth upon this valley. Throughout its meadow there was a joy worth living. 2 children with the splendor of the sun and moon were seen playing in the distance. One, with a wooden sword pointing it to the clouds, commanded the eternal day to unfold. Pleasing was their presence before heaven, for the little girl had in her heart all the bird songs which she heard in the trees, and the little boy had all the expansion of the blue sky that he saw above. Indeed, like the flowers in this meadow, the blossoming of all sweet souls entertain a sanctuary of treasures that would draw one into the presence of joy, a joy that was whole. In this community of paradise, where all nature seemed to be out on a holiday, a sudden seriousness, an intruding predicament had disturbingly roamed in its forlornness up over the hills, and likened to a phantom of evil for which we ought to presume it to be, sought to produce a display of unnecessary turbulence. As it was the only shadow in the scene, we may reckon that we listen in for this story, that it may be told.
Our king has made his decision that I may find you.
What a cute white camel you ride.
It's not a white camel. It's one of the king's white stallions.
You've come far over this emerald green valley with your white camel. I can see clearly that it's the will of your heart that has made you love me.
Nothing of logic could have taught her how deep he was her friend, or how far she had yet to climb to make him think of her in the same character.
Everybody loves you, but I came to save you.
Then you better save me fast. There's a flying dragon that wants to steal me away.
Don't go! Tell your father that you're scared of the sea!
I can't lie to him. I've never lied. But I don't want to leave you. I'll detest going to school abroad. I'll die if I leave you.
Their future life, the possible life premeditated by their parents in which was to be brought upon them thenceforth, although constructed to be radiant and full of aspirations, filled their thoughts with a trembling fear of anxiety, an infinite phantom's abyss. In front of them the certainty of an inevitable pressing forward adulthood, behind them the magical wonderland of a child. What would become of their flame? And above all, why must she go? In retaliation to despair, the little girl remembered a tale that had always struck her as an intrigue. She had previously conveyed to him a story that her mother had shared with her some 2 years ago before her demise. Her mother had sincere sentiments for a certain tomb in a graveyard, of which she purported to be the monument of a buried saint. The tomb of 99 wishes was considered and fabled by her to have inspired higher entities of the spiritual realm to grant favors. The needed essentials to make the wish hold true was denial of doubt, resistance to fear of the supernatural, a full night's contemplation of prayer on the stone, which invokes divine consolation with the guardian keeper of this vault. Although the little children had not comprehended all the rules set forth, their station of endearment would soon validate those concerns. And so it was, bless their hearts, the children were instantly absorbed with the absolute of the legacy. In fact, to these children, the first glance at this opportunity, which already knew itself as the occasion, was now like the dawn of the sky. Prolifically, like all of us, they are the children of God, and of which in such the presence fail not their faces to illuminate an extra measure of shining upon every star in the evening ahead. Nevertheless, a painful tremor was in their hearts, but yet, with their mission half won, there was the rekindling inspiration of a confirmed hope, which fuses this emotional mystery made up of all the innocence of the present and of all the passion for the future. Their prayers would have gone on to great lengths, but for a natural intervention. They plainly got sleepy. In these moments afterwards, all was as still and as silent as it had been before their heart's intrusion on this stone.
As we have long anticipated, that old fool, the Cardinal of St. John, has rallied his persuasions of investigating our establishment to the Holy See, thus having his chief interrogator, the inspector, right on my heels.
Do not worry, my loyal friend. If it came to an arraignment, I myself will present your case to the Holy See. Contingent that you are reprieved, there's bound to be some vindication. The cloister will reinstate that you are acting as a soldier of the cross.
But with a legal license, he's invading our holy realm. He's provoking the cause that I, the accused, must suffer the death penalty.
Yes. He is coaxing revenge from those jealous within the establishment, seeking revenge for your lucrative plunder. However, you forget that my influence, along with that of our dear friend Cardinal Vumia's, is not a thing to take lightly. Christian war monks like you, of military solidarity, are of paramount priority. We should make your case into one of a hero's. Perhaps even one day, one of a saint.
Leaving that big joke to the devil, am I to hear you correctly, Your Eminence? Are you sure not to compromise your share of the wealth by bringing Vumia on board?
It's no coincidence that Cardinal Vumia would support our cause. He has known for some time of your hoarding the Eastern confiscation, so we will speak no further of dividing my share only. However, speak more of this investigator of the church.
Let it suffice you to know I was given a reliable account of his vindictive thirst as an esteemed guardian of justice. However, he has not placed his popularity upon us by holding up that transparent shield of justice, for which 2 of our lesser brothers have been implicated in charges which now face me.
They are not you, nor are they valiant heroes of the cross. You have that in distinction of them. Also, you have 2 superiors that Satan himself fears.
At which turn of events will our proctor of the ecclesiastical court apprehend this vicious prosecutor of the cardinal and sentence him for persecuting me, who has become his prey. He should charge yonder prosecutor as a snake, who with self-righteous tongue means to steal away from every crusader of the cross his symbol of dignity.
Archbishop Malice, our influence is more than a court card on your side. After all, we are men of credential who are empowered to fight the indefensible. Our identities alone will censor the decision.
It had been an affirming dialogue shared between 2 high-stationed men of the cloth, neither one of their tarnished halos altogether shining bright, eagerly sharing secrets provoked and withheld. Indeed, 2 dastardly men of a shared panic-sickened consciousness who were brought together by an allegiance of an evil sort, and while consoled in the pledging to uphold their own prosperity for a better future, they had long since forgiven themselves of 2 unpardonable sins, that they should have never gone to war to murder their brothers in the first place, and they should have never stolen from the slain what was not theirs.
Cardinal Peter, when are you going to come to the point of realizing the travesty in sacrificing one of our most scrupulous brothers?
Cardinal Anthony, there is no time to call up my Christian sentiment and cast a look of compassion upon our unfortunate inspector. After all, his loyalty and attachment to the sacred legitimacies of our church and state is the very reason I have endorsed him. Besides preserving our campaign wholly from any internal corruption, our inspector himself would assure us of there being no more nobler a cause.
But we who are his guardians are bound to be deficient in protecting him. The Archbishop's constituents, few as they may be, will be like a pack of wolves upon our land.
Suspect to underhanded plundering, the character of that war bishop's past employments, and the foul pretense of serving God, our Inspector Xavier must arrest that Christ impostor.
But to go after Archbishop Malice and imprison him will be to bring upon us the plague of his eminent superior, Cardinal Damien.
With infinite patience, I have endured a series of unmerited castbacks upon apprehending that one too.
Your grudge stems from the past. And even though the cloister dismissed your allegations against him, you still see him as that pious fiend who instigated the suffering you endured during those 10 long years in that English dungeon.
I leave such vengeance for God. Speaking of which, it is only coincidence that our young inspector's destiny is to apprehend all villains within this holy establishment. Thus, we must not derange what God has arranged. The sanctity of this virtue of duty alone should cast from him the abomination of fear. Nonetheless, our Inspector Xavier Dory is our security in realizing the fulfillment of a greater cleansing of the hierocracy.
And with that said, they broke up the squabble, which was not the first nor their last, and returned to the cathedral together in such confidence. Indeed, what passed in this interview, we have seen enough, and upon their return, we can only imagine the worst for their inspector, who was once that little boy from the meadow. The year is 1812. The church has a servant and the nation a puppet. An innocent boy has grown up into a young man to serve them. The young man's name is Xavier. To depict this man is to depict the moral conditioning of mankind as a whole. Therein, may we take upon ourselves the virtue to study this lost sparrow in the world of vultures, an eagle and a dove.
My Excellency, Archbishop Malizet, as you requested.
Very well, Gaston, thank you. As you've been well advised, I have been appointed as General Inspector by His Excellency Cardinal Abmacy. And though my new station of authority has left me in jeopardy with the jealousy wicked of the establishment, know that it is as a martyr above these priests of corruption that my sole allegiance stands with my cardinal's purposeful agenda of the papacy's restoration.
Perhaps from an orthodox point of view, we might examine this Monsignor, whom is acclaimed the Inspector General of the Cardinal, is chief and righteous prosecutor of the Church. From this joint conglomerate of military and religious agendas, hag-ridden with scandalous deformities, perhaps we must suspect the man beholden to a hidden dilemma, that the conglomerate as a whole was actually in scarred discord with the message of our Lord. Hence, consistent with upholding the absurd paradox right through the ages, where the Old Testament vices are in conflict with the New Testament virtues, that tangled, misconstrued paradox, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, in contrast with turn the other cheek. He could not clearly see the difference of the latter's resolve in magnificence. With these complications and assets of his personality brought to our attention, may we now pass on to the worst of saintly impostors. Although known as a man of charm and high station, the Archbishop seemed more a man of arrogance than a man of humility, sitting there at the examining table of reprehensible deception, assessing the situation of this bold figure who had the audacity to bring him in for an interrogation.
Suppose I, along with other superiors of the cloister, would rather endorse your personage to a different station, postponing what your cardinal has already qualified. Our resolution would really rather have you censoring our borders from unethical religions which would encroach and defile her. In this decree, we would only ask that the staff in your hand be a firm enough grasp to lay its full weight and measure upon the heathen of God, scourging and burning them as many as best suit our directive. Then, and only then, Monsignor, shall I and the majority of other superiors judge your position responsible, giving your foolery of absence its full pleasure of license.
Before such a soulless entity, we feel only the fullest apprehension of respect. Why he would instigate this station of persecution demanded of his constituent are secrets of an inferior faith known only in the tomb, where souls decompose wholly toward the worst.
Monsignor Dory, you do intend to remain an investigating agency of the Cardinal for long, do you?
I shall not be here except for the rule of justice, though since your last deplorable statement, I'd first considered myself a Catholic judge, and then a servant to its people. After examining many of the elders within the cloister, and now presently you, War Bishop, my opinion stands reversed.
Come now, Inspector. You are most certainly aware that the installation of your eminent position by the Cardinal has not had a happy effect on the senior members of this establishment. Honestly, Inspector, do you expect from us of infallible personages to endure even the least insult on our reputations? Suggestively, it's better suited for your career's longevity, as well as your old age expectations, to stay in mutual mediation with at least one other esteemed elder, perhaps indirectly and discreetly me, rather than all alone with just one cardinal.
I could not guess your reason I would turn to you, Archbishop Malice, though to the significance of your disclosure, I do understand that it is their prescribed sin to persecute me.
The bishop smirked upon the cardinal's inspector like as if he too was much in favor of the cloister's contention as he spoke.
You, Archbishop, an ex-war bishop, who has been so full of greed, so many years to every mark of obsession, it is your fate now to be under arrest for withholding a substantial portion of a Mid-Eastern confiscation. Without doubt, your destructive and carefree nature of past pillaging and plundering have the tables turned on you now, as only a comic lesson of grand providence can do.
Obviously now, the rough allegations of the inspector handling him, the coldness of the inspector's outpost stone walls, and the breathing of decayed air from earlier confessions within them had without doubt roused the confident gargoyle from his arrogance.
Chief Inspector Dory, the crown of thorns should be your symbol. Such persistent self-righteous behavior is an erroneous plea for martyrdom without sainthood. However admirable you may think your grand station of examiner may be, know full well that this disposition that you entertain for yourself, along with the concurrence of insinuating marks against our monarch, have put you on trial with this sacred establishment's officiating elders.
I have nothing to hide. It was my service to Bonaparte during the Battle of Wagram against the Austrian Empire that had fostered impressions of remorse upon my conscience. Being then impulsive, I was hypocritically naive within my youthful years, to the effect of spreading throughout Europe our country's principles through the ideology of this iron-handed conqueror. At that time, I only believed a calculable future of prosperity would result for France. This ongoing war with England and the rumored speculation of a threat of warfare with Russia had again disenchanted my theological ideology for peace and goodwill.
Am I to personally hear the resonance of treason in your voice? It is simply your folly not to understand that the existence of such an undisputed monarch is indispensable to waging the Church's holy war.
Inasmuch as affecting an air of stubborn ambition, while profiting by the additional immunities found only in plundering other nations, this ex-war bishop's reckless indifference of the commandments was, however, prevalently held in the highest regard by the ancient diocese, influentially powerful throughout the western regions. Upholding to their excessive want of dominion, it was obvious that his ascent by the pillars of the Vatican had been made possible.
Bonaparte has forced the Spanish king to yield his sovereignty and placed his own brother on the throne of Spain. Through his victorious triumphs, he is the virtual master of the continent.
All over Europe, Bonaparte has set his relatives upon the throne. His brother-in-law Murat is now the king of Naples. Bernadotte now the crown ruler of Sweden. Louis Bonaparte, the sovereign ruler of Holland. in due respect to our armies. Yes, Prussia was humiliated, but in her humiliation she is now breeding a newfound patriotism. And indeed, Italy was compelled to cease civil war, but in that, she for the first time has tasted unity, that of which may later only prove to create severe consequences for France.
How dare you fear Bonaparte's ambition? Have you forgotten your vows of loyalty to the Church? After all, is it not our own supreme excellency and holiness, Pope Pius VII, who placed the crown of France upon his head, making him emperor? After all, the sacred consecration of this vested intercourse is deemed by the Vatican in parallel to the lifeblood of his inevitable political objectives. Your insubordination may be due to your naivete in understanding the internal ordained works of the Vatican, and its sister counterpart, the governmental state of affairs, those of which are so necessarily one body working hand in hand. All of Europe has but yet to realize that Bonaparte's true crowning glory is soon to be attained at last. Unknown to Europe, at his bequest, Bonaparte has secured an annulment of his marriage to Josephine from His Holy Excellency. As you most likely know, Bonaparte will soon be wed to Mary Louise, daughter of the Emperor of Austria. Do you not comprehend the ramifications of the underlying network of Austria's economic structure, which are congenial to our cause?
Misguided and assuming wretch. 'Tis an evil thing to announce this divorce as a precursor to progress, but a far worse sin to sanctify the annulment of marriage by blessing it.
Amongst the greed-ridden and unprincipled men of whom the hierarchy of the church and nation included way too many, our inspector may, however, be distinguished from them once more. He was indeed different from those superiors, as he knew not how to veil those vices of hypocrisy, nor could he assume on his exterior personage the fanaticism of imperialism, which he internally despised.
Monk, your rebellious tongue has finally outrun your discretion. Your antagonism against the monarch, and now the Pope, are again unwarranted, and pronounces an air of being deliberately provoking to my ears. Obvious as I am now personally made a witness, you remain adamant still in your oppositions. Can you ascertain that we will not tolerate your resolution against the monarch, least of all his eminence? You, more than anyone, must realize that the proctor of the ecclesiastical court has pronounced you as one blinded in this matter, and will certainly convince you of your error, if need be, by the cloister's influential methods. Insomuch as I have forewarned you, I should abandon you to your fate. Your esteemed adversaries deem to persuade you into obedience, which will be sure to remedy this annoying conflict once and for all. Trials like these move rapidly forward when the proctor is coerced of the sentience beforehand.
With this reveal, one would have expected the bishop should have made off, back to his basilica's attic like a bat, and plunge himself into a hole. How aptly this threat described his confidence of the cloister's propensity to safeguard one of Satan's favorite bastards.
Monsignor Dori, if I am again degraded or ridiculed by your allegations, my remarkable patience shall equal my resolving contempt, and you will hasten to end your own life by death, rather than seek help from one petty cardinal.
Obviously, the cloister's kangaroo court, from this exclusive inner circle's shadow to its outmost despicable ring of shady deception and underhanded corruption, was with unanimous decision before the light of day.
If it pleases you, my lord, appease my mind as to when my litigation was brought before the court of His Holy Excellency. The Holy Proctor's conjuncture with its legal ramifications. Was that made after the possessed monkey was sentenced to burn at the stake? Or was it before his accomplice, the goat, who was sentenced for exorcism? Pity me, holy preceptor, but I become particularly confused when the ancient turnkey of the lower dungeons was subpoenaed to testify that there was a conspiracy.
You audacious upstart! Abandon your skepticism, as it only projects itself with indignation from the threshold of your own ignorance!
There are certain agitations which stir up the bottom of a marshy moat, and by which make clouds of mud rise in the murky water. This kind turned over the hot coals of hell within the old demon. Indeed, the passages of these words of bold sarcasm was never meant to escape the director of prelates.
How dare you measure my words in that insolent manner? Having thus unmasked your singular intention to cast repudiation upon your elder constituents, spare us your reprehensible array of insults.
Accursed of spirits, which forsakes them of God's benevolence, just where in your dungeons do these devil-worshipping priests hide? And who, but Satan's angels or a fiend incarnate of the same, set such an underworldly appraisal on their ghostly paranoia? Truly, their superstition is upon a level equal to worshipping Satan himself. You yourself, a villainous incarnate, should pray for them to keep better rule of their tongues when I, the Inspector General, am at the theme of it.
It was Pope Stephen VII who ordered the 8-month-old rotten corpse of Pope Formus to be excavated from its grave and tied upright in a courtroom chair to be tried for transgressions of the canons. Before the putrefied corpse, this pope in purple and gold regalia paced backwards and forwards, shrieking at the decayed body. The trial was grotesque and an obscene farce. Stripped of its vestments, 3 fingers were cut off from his right hand, and the remains dumped in the river Tiber. We can understand inevitably why this morbid Pope VII was later strangled while in prison.
These learned men of the Supreme Tribunal, whom you ridicule, are of pious distinction. Being uniquely singular of commitment, they are the daring who have intimate correspondence with diabolical influences. Beware of your ingratitude, for they are the truly brave, who remain dauntless in their determination to effectively weed out sorcerers, eradicate saintly impostors, condemn heretics, and burn witches.
As most hidden things are often least comprehended, the Holy See was really virtuously upholding the longevity of the tradition, which hunted down heretics, sorcerers, witches, and more than on 1,000 occasions exorcised and exterminated possessed monkeys, chickens, and suspicious-looking goats.
Perhaps, Monseigneur, you should return with me to the perilous times of my early initiations within this cloister, when its elders warned me in hushed voices to be obedient to their cause, coerced me into turning a blind eye to anything of peculiar consequence that I might have thought to have seen or heard pertaining to the realm of evil spirits that lurk in this house of rituals. I would be the first to admit that in the past I too have had dealings with demons. Hence I know firsthand, much to my own shame, how convincingly conniving their sinister plots can deceive you. Those indescribable spirits of routine chicaneries have been trained from their post of some deep guile, some well-devised stratagem. Try thy boasted strength on their temptations, and see if you can prevent their purpose.
It was also here at this critical moment where the inspector remained an instant gazing upon the pompous face of the church imperialist, in whose features pride should have long since been contending with shame.
Now stand corrected, Inspector. As a holy veteran of wars who has carried the burden of these precious preserves in my arms and on my back across 2 continents, I insist you note of my distinguished perseverance, for I've been to hell and back on account of my loyalty. Nonetheless, the love of costly jewels and the great hatred that everybody had for heretics were the motives of the most influential. As such was this collaboration of the righteous, certainly not to raise any brows from any of my superiors.
Nothing unbecoming of a murderer tinged his pride ridding the world of heathens, for the ideology of killing a foreign brother was commended as a worthy one. Such was the beastly nature of the world's greatest crimes, impious to trace any further the slander of the blasphemer, unless, of course, you went back to its source, the outlaws of the church. Sadly true. The Church's institution for combating or suppressing heresy sanctioned a total of 19 inquisitions that continued unabated for 475 years. Earlier still, Pope Gregory officially declared that killing heretics is not murder, and decreed it legal for the Church and its militants to murder non-believers. The truth of this deplorable matter is that certain popes compelled Christian monarchs to persecute heretics up until the 19th century as crime punishable by death under civil codes.
Imagine the feeling to march triumphantly through a succession of those heathen streets, only to know all the while, behind those shuttered windows and those locked doors, were most probable young, delicate wenches, all a-trembling for the sake of their virginity.
By the liberator's own account, he must have lived his life among some of the wickedest men that Satan, while turning a blind eye, allowed to escape with his fire, so that they may rage it upon the earth.
Indeed, how intriguing and thrilling to traverse their municipalities as cross-carrying conquerors after the cannoning of an illustrious mosque.
The war bishop's history, on which the inspector had since cast its stare, startled him. The first effect which disillusioned him was the perpetual cycle of harmonic greed it fostered in plundering between his fellow brothers. The Church, its empire, was becoming to him, all along, nothing but a monstrous exploitation of the human heart. Nonetheless, with the exemption of many charitable, devout, and progressive souls like this inspector within the organized establishment, we should hear a different story than this, but we know too much to ignore the facts. Prevalent through the past, as universal history reveals, are the heinous records of religious and state authorities' vested embrace that have accounted for enormous, consequential travesties.
Now only you can confirm this for me, and you may well imagine how confounded my cardinal shall be to hear that someone so mischievous and hostile lies beneath that basilica's roof. Even my informants tell me that you were so bold as to once steal from the savage of the seas. Now my principal question is this true?
The Church gargoyle feared neither God, nor devil, nor plundering or pillaging, but this Indian of the Americas, whom many acclaimed as a hero hunting down tyrants, the Church lizard did fear.
Tell it all to me. Start from the very beginning.
Then imagine me during an early morning, wakening only to find monks from a nearby mosque closing in upon our encampment, and that through the night, death and mutilation had reduced and disfigured our company of God's treasure seekers to a lessened, frightful few. Our righteous assembly, those Christian soldiers of fortune, further falling into dismay, seizing a few necessities, and deserting the remainder of our comrades, had but one occupation: to flee by our heels, outright from those hills, with treasures thus confiscated. Realistically, who could blame me that through my facilitations of this prearranged, though hastened departure, it would immediately become our parting policy that self-preservation no longer be checked by such foolhardy allegiances?
I can see it all now. With adversaries more easily resisted than your prosperity, the greed motive detracted nothing from the bravery of your actions. Here you were, therefore, a trespasser on foreign soil, the name of the province you wished to leave anonymous, while even then you were most likely so ill acquainted with your own campaign of plundering that you knew not in which direction to further pillage, to the north or to the south. The alert of a formidable altercation being sudden, you had scurried forth, without guilt, no less orders. Our Pope's mandate struck from your consciousness in your hastened departure, your vow of allegiance as the least of your memories. You had no companions but your deadly pack of hyenas, no real weapon but your self-acclaimed station of piety, and the devil the largest of jewels in your sacramental pouch. In short, you were for the entire world like one of those marauders with whom so-called liberators as yourselves have made us acquainted in their righteously noble but truly licentious tales.
Inspector Xavier Dory, without disparaging your earnestness in your duties to your cardinal, might we now suspect the hand of God in the success of the trust reposed in me, to confiscate and deliver those rare treasures from the heathen?
A decisively prideful excuse, critical for every Inquisition's proclamation. His redundant remarks, always the Christ compromise, were made with a kind of melancholy composure to that of a politician.
With the cloister's approval out of contention, I was able to proceed. I repeat, I was and am still far from ashamed of my vested enterprise, of murdering heathens, no less heretics, is a sanctification honorable of any Christian soldier. So it was for a week that my first deacon and I were waiting for our men to return, a dreadfully worn-out journey with 1,000 perils that had already laid far behind us. And sure, if there were ever any curse to behold, it had culminated to a peak that very late hour, when only one soldier finally arrived. More surprisingly, allegations now fell on us without a token of reservation, much to the critical discernment of the last barbarian, whom I had thought to be my once trusted bodyguard. Indeed, in the critical moment on that morning, he took counsel less of me, his own superior, than of his instincts. From the scope of things, I had expected a series of his severe and unrepressed blows to commence on my excellence of flesh at any moment, and my personage in the midst of this last warrior was strategically not reassuring in the least. Imagine this one quarreling with me like a crying baby, saying we had deserted them, only using them for profit and glory. Indeed, unresolved was this untimely affair. A ridiculous accusation alleged at us, and worst, insinuated from a man we once trusted, would surely have gone on to great length but for an alarming intervention. Indeed, it was out of the inlet's forest a stranger of priority contention must have come. There he was, at least, a vulgarly menacing savage, one who was greatly known and most dreaded in fable, and there he stood amidst us as if in 1,000 rebellious forms, consigned by his own vendetta into one diabolical immensity. There was now indeed in this inlet 3 soldiers with the sword of the cross, another of the arena like a gladiator, invincible. Thus this decree of peril was not easy to measure at the time, and you, Inspector, should not be inclined to think now that any of this predicament is at all exaggerated. With a broad axe on his shoulder, looking auspiciously accommodating now at our confiscated loot which was just at his feet, I had indeed journeyed forth out of one rude zone of a conspiracy, where the curse of desertion might be more easily remedied, to a regrettable zone of remorse, that of the arena. And immediately I began to prefer the danger of any mortal that I knew to the legacy of that legend I knew only of, expressionally eminent in its contempt. It instantly became obvious to me he took no cares to hide his thoughts, and certainly I read them like a plague from out of the written gospel. Like those news journals' excessive accounts of such the caricature, he was indeed no less sparsely dressed, revealing the flesh of his corpse, still moved with the semblance of Samson, but the vengeance on his face pronounced the pillars had fallen. No doubt at such a moment a thunderbolt might have fallen within 30 paces of us, and we would not have acknowledged it. So deeply was our undivided indulgence in this savage who was absorbed and buried in the appropriation of our loot. I had now resigned myself to the fate with which I was menaced, for in the immediate nearness of what was left of our illustrious acquisitions, indeed all else had been forgotten. Do you know, Inspector, how even the bravest of battle would react in that position of peril?
It is said that his vows were to exterminate all oppressors of tyranny off the map. But if he had lifted his veil of being a warrior who fought for humanity, then he would have revealed with monstrous contradiction that only his massacred tribe instigated his actions.
While neither reserved nor select of Christian etiquette, it was obvious that the savage had always lived up to his vows well in the past too, with not so much of a whimper, just rebellious hints of indifference indicated by excessive use of axe and great sword.
So, that being the case, you may have some latitude for your fears. But we should be frank and make a clean breast of it. This intriguing figure that you saw, did you truly recognize it as him who lived his life solely as the great avenger?
Although it went so quick, and the beast was so doubled up, I would swear on your cardinal's Bible that it was indeed he who stalks, and is that very tyrant hunter. Mankind's instincts under these circumstances are neither slow to think, nor dull to perceive the obvious connections. An executioner's axe on his shoulders, an authoritative sword of a master buckled to waist, and the confidence of a predator stalking was surely, plainly, the legend's advertisement.
Seeing one telltale sign after another, and taking into account your Inquisition's ransacking, pillaging, and plundering tradition, it must surely had come strongly to your mind that the stalker of autocrats had since been eliminating your men one by one during the night, leaving them in ruin by his assailing vindictiveness.
This was surely that opposing rival's design that I soon had reason to regret. I see that you, Monseigneur, must have read this dismal story as a child, and yet still you are unimpressed by this tale of this renegade Indian. Rough and impetuous as a Tyrannosaurus Rex, where only instinctual force was to be apprehended, it stooped over doubled as it made its gait hideous, perhaps from the weight of the axe it held, or the burden of a greatly tormented past. Given the candid stalk of an immense predator, but unlike any carnivore that I had ever witnessed, the lagoon's bestial custodian had since went on its prehistoric course from one warrior to another, as it charged. Perhaps it was the impeccable instinct, personified by years of obedient soldiering, but to any of these credentials and in any circumstance, I drew my sacredly blessed pistol, and holding it with consecrated aim, though he, this American tribesman, was with great heat bearing down upon me, while I simultaneously squeezed off its trigger. And wouldn't you curse it, that as its hammer fell, there was neither flash nor sound. Its priming was in default, with too long an exposure of moisture from the sea.
We can only imagine that the bishops, bound as if with no gravity, had beheld an Olympian dexterity for sprints of the shorter classification, to the form and agility of which only the greatest of cowards could ever achieve. It was indeed a parting admission, survival being no longer checked by the reverent decorum of a Christian soldier. No doubt he must have cursed the saints for their neglect, and recalled him to the memory of repriming all his weapons. Then he would surely not have been as he is now, a handicapped sheep fleeing before this butcher. This hastened departure shed further embarrassment upon the bishop, attaching an inconceivable insult to the afternoon's confession. And by now, in the course of this investigation, the inspector must have been overjoyed at the crumbling of the bishop's defense, a crumbling prompted by his own omission to 2 cowardly desertions. The soldier of the cross had since bellowed profanity, dispersing curses on himself for being there, on mankind for encouraging him, and particularly on anybody or anything that would now get in his way.
That you would even make that legendary native man's acquaintance and live to tell the tale is a conflict of opinion that I shall hold to my dying day.
Bah! What skeptical assessment is this? You deem me a liar, eh? Must I suffice you with a war journal account of all the men I have personally slain for the cross?
But it was not heresy that instigated a 35-year crusade against the Cathars, where in this period of Christian history hundreds of thousands of people were butchered and most of France made desolate. It was that the papacy demanded revenues of their land. Historians estimate a result of this devastation caused by this particular Catholic Inquisition that 500 towns were wiped off the map. Also, the ruthless, brutal militia of Jesus Christ in the 13th century, labeled by the general populace as the throat cutters, was an established force of 500,000 troops who descended on unarmed folk who certainly experienced the papal hierarchy of religion was fostered not by pious men of integrity, but by demonic entities who thought to reign their land.
Is that it? Is that all you have to say for that vault, full of what you call a few trinkets?
Now, Inspector, you speak of those deeds as a liberator for which I fought so hard should be cast away into oblivion. How little you of prudish contrariety understand the language of compensations, Inspector.
Now, as a bargain of bribes, the serpent indeed tried to do some shady, underhanded bartering with the cardinal's very own emissary, hoping to entice him by offering a wholesale worth of indulgences, to gratify his whims lustfully and to lavish on him the cloister's eccentricities, all of which went beyond an altogether unreasonable extent.
My dear extortionist, fling that bone to the big dogs. Your confessions of the confiscation held prudently legitimate are packed with lies, least abominations. And hence, such the deception have long since become the great art of the conglomerate. By giving a catastrophe such as your crusades, is to merely furnish your conglomerate's own appearance to the whole world with the skylight of heaven. May you be buried with it.
Come now, Inspector. You sound as though you have committed your words for my eulogy.
Wherewithal the ill-stricken gargoyle sat before him with a peculiar crucifixion on his face, in all his shameful regalia, overburdened with the lost dignity of being an impostor of the Christ. As for the inspector, as calm and assured as if he was presently attending the man's funeral. And what of the stalker of tyrants, whom as a child watched his family and tribe get massacred by the British of New France, leaving him an orphan? For what future vindications would equal the miseries of his mind? Historical drama as a whole sheds its precarious light on man's conflicting struggle with such the adversary, while admirably sympathizing with the bold ones who take such matters into their hands. What is appealingly important to the meek and those broken-hearted is when a man proclaimed as a warrior of the downtrodden had reached his last effort, being surely exasperated, he finally then realized he had become the very thing he despised. It is in this context we may say, with each passing confrontation one encounters in this world, a wise and courageous soul clinging still to the earth through virtue, already wishing to touch heaven through holiness, sets off to find itself in full. From the sun suspended like a candle in the sky dome of heaven, such an emerged soul has since conquered himself, as a higher dispensation has revealed to this one that the only real war was the war within. Presently we have observed him walk in the morning leisurely and at random, conscious only of a desire for movement, silence, the abandonment to walking, and the thought of no particular destination braced him yet more, so that he had begun to rise upon what saintly mystics live for, God's descending spirit. When he had been seized again with that indescribable sensation that heralded his consciousness beyond any slumber, emerging it refreshingly with the base passion of gratitude, which generously raged within him like a tempest and produced a sovereign attitude of appreciation at every resting place. Indeed, from the air of paradise, gratitude seemed to be his celestial respiration. Having thus ventured this fashion magnificently by foot, he had indeed promenaded exuberantly into the forested cove, hunted not by fears, chattering not those internal dialogues, sulking not the mundane worries, descending through those less frequented paths, counting without time the moments that still divided him from another saintly quarry of mankind. Adorned in godly fashion, with wisdom of ascendant rapture, he journeyed liberated by whispers of the wind that came out of a forgotten divinity. The same breath had bore him from village to village, country to country, on and around the Western Hemisphere, and by his aid, within his new life's quarry, consecrated souls have been seen to fly. Indeed, perfect existence was a treasure bequeathed to him by God, and of his latter days of his existence, he now wore them on his ring finger, where his heart held his hand. Drenched in the wine of creation, thus his heart prevalent. It seemed to him that the spirit of Eden was contained in the very present moment and constantly waits for anyone's reawakening, whomever is ready to realize the Creator's miracle of unity. To this one every tree and blade of grass danced in the meadow, but to an eye with a vision all seemed plain and ordinary. Indeed, here and there the vision was all-consuming, and through the sum of it all, there was peace in the Garden of Eden, an invitation everywhere to come and lie down here and be at rest with the lion and the lamb. Hence, with more splendors than many, he had sat saturated of spirit, adoring the Creator's handiworks, and no bull elk or great bird on wing could have kept a more sacred watch. All that time, not a foot of man had come to annoy him. Thereby, from what can be observed, surely a voice had spoken in this traveler's bosom that there was something miraculously here to his advantage. O ruler of my heart, wherever you roam, never go without me. Only those who have been wanderers long desolate can know the power there is in this appeal.
What have we here? A homeless migrant? Look at me when I speak to you. Just your loitering appearance has rendered you guilty of idle mischief.
Clowns. Here before me appears another circus to dispose of. Comedians of severe manifestations. Note to reason that my sentiments are engaged in tranquility, not to be subordinated to oppression or reduced to restriction by this inappropriate charade of buffoonery.
Immediately after this salutation, the stranger with his survey and assessment made loud and clear then looked away from this Draconian carnival and appeared to resume those contemplations in which he had sat immersed in peaceful dignity before the garden's present occupation of these aggravated shadows. Thus he sat, now their designated victim, but not so naive to their designs.
Who are you to insult our stations with your unscrupulous assessment?
The ostracized soul, with all the inherited courtesies of a saint, declined the request, alleging that he could not at this time suffer his name to be known for reasons which he had assigned to his preservation.
I will not stand for this pauper's insubordination. I order this penniless scoundrel flogged to the excess, but baptized whipped before he's hung. I'll stake my reputation that sitting right there is a man on the run. Go pasture the horses and we'll hang this tramp.
Subsequently, this was no scene to put our minds to rest. A posse of bounty hunters, over-venerated within the public's imagery, found in the progress with a mad judge over the facilitation of a hanging. And to make things worse, not many persons down from where the cardinal's heretic stalkers sat, consumed in the watching.
Did you range the rest of the horses?
The horse has been watered and fed. His features bear a character of a fugitive. I just can't recall.
The sheriff of this pack of bounty hunters was obviously a man of uncompromising salary. To turn a profit from any circumstance was the quality which distinguished him above the other marshals, and elevated the simplest forms of misdemeanors into the highest underhanded felonies for an inflated reward.
What's the confusion, Pujo? Can't you tell after all these years of experience that the scoundrel's guilty? Your mind is back in the last war.
Our employer's right. The vagabond is rude. He deserves more than a mere thrashing.
Here he said this, now rendering the process of a trial obsolete, recalling to one scrutiny a wild boar. And who should enter the scene a towering and awful apparition, the skeletal existence of a dreaded entity, another of the infamous deputies who, with an ill-omened stare, brought death with it.
So, he's going out of this world, is he?
This one's appearance was even more ferocious and formidable than Sheriff Pujo. It's sometimes more startling to meet a psychotic than a psychopath. At a certain point of this one's insanity, he gazed upon his fellow beings as upon goblins, as if they themselves were possessed by a sort of spectral indifference. With a cautious glimpse extended into the past, we are sure to observe that though these men seemed from the grave, they were more the ones who would put others in them. Ironically, there was a point in time when a mortician had undermined Marshal Matuzik's burial. Often when he was alive, he still looked dead, and as often when he looked dead, he was alive. But more disturbing from a mortician's point of view, as handsomely rugged as this tall stiff looked, it looked unburied. Cursed as this creature was for living, it could not die. Still, we must take into account it was death that brought this vampire to life. Indeed, here was enough of a vampire for a silver stakes purpose.
What's the delay? Shackle the scoundrel and I'll flog him.
With cruelty a matter of routine, Deputy Jobs was redundant in his anticipating tradition. Of these grisly arts of flogging and hanging, he never left one out.
Those who confess nothing under the sun will surely confess to me in the dawning of the twilight.
One could say Deputy Jobs was indeed a vampire, yet most would observe he was abroad by day. With the least patience, he had been a tarnished tin star shining only in the twilight, stretching out a coil of rope, preserving its sacrilege for anyone it might take life. It had been for this nocturnal creature never a singular exception to sneak from under the eye of the sun to hang a sacrificial offering on a nearby tree.
Those who hold their tongue in front of a magistrate will surely confess at the day of their hanging.
Marshal Pujo, a tall menace of a man, a great connoisseur of hangings, a pretty faithful servant of the guillotine, was the chief of his master's fraction. Upon a hanging judge's endorsement, he was the warden of the law. A captive of the magistrate's prejudices, his manners were of the old regime, his habits of the prehistoric. Most times this constable could be viewed throwing a temper tantrum while brandishing his cat of nine tails. We can be sure he had taken to both those peculiarities during the riot years at a West Indian sugar plantation, where he was commissioned to restore the establishment. And we ought to know that the captain's whipping wall was his favorite place for scourging his motley crew when he was once a common pirate from down there too. Such was his way, where he announced that he enjoyed torturing a man's soul just as much as seeing flesh rip open from the lashes he made. It was a peculiar intrigue of his, as well as a sadistic pastime, for the fiendishly hateful fellow seemed to rejoice in mutilating a body as much as crippling a man's mind too. From the magistrate downward, his employees, or should we say bounty hunters, were notorious in the region for desperate means of incarceration. Deputies of the law that were reputed as notorious marshals, the most severe of their kind, all fit associates of the judicial system, embarking together without remorse to their profession to apprehend non-conforming entities who dodged the war, no matter the concurrent repercussions of any true religion. Hence, binding their persecutions very tight about their masters' prejudices, they were a hand-picked posse of consequence, and thus were told that their acts of oppression simply came with the benefits of the job. You must understand that always they went out with a bullwhip under one arm and a noose under the other, of which such punitive accessories darkened a major portion of their stories. Indeed, as certain as there were these tarnished tin stars in this foul posse, Magistrate DeClaw was the overall residing chief executioner of this legal vendetta. Lit by the light of a dying day and by the absence of a departed soul, night had fallen on this shadow, if we could depict the abysmal source of life in this entity. Though he was not actually yet a phantom, we could be sure he was no longer a man. He had under the veil of justice something of death, that of the grave. Besides the knack for commonly expressing his bigotry, one thing betrayed him even worse before his constituents, and that was his face. In fact, one might have said that the burden of being a hanging judge, its delusion, anxiety, and misery, dominated his countenance and resulted with permanency upon his face. No doubt, from out of their promiscuous past, this posse had also taken the pleasure to hang a multitude of many draft dodgers, may we presume, to make a vaunt of their national pride, perhaps hoping to secure a greater reputation of patriotism above all lawmen. From the candidly stark appearance of personifying schoolyard bullies, we may even conceive they, as youths, must have wanted the same notoriety personifying their adult lives. Careers boasting the title, undertakers of the law. Dormant but not dead, all these headhunters had the touch of competition, a measure, no matter how perverse, for the cheers and the blood of the arena. Indeed, they were the living proof that justice herself, not just Oslam's, has her original characters. Thus, being a lawless gang of a hanging judge, we are apt to conclude irresponsible gunslingers of Western America might offer the figure of their preponderating station of reckless abandonment. In reality, these legalized vigilantes of justice were rather more the outlaws themselves than the greater of their prey. Perhaps we should be easier on all of them. After all, it was this little lofty world that had invented the necessity of this job, and then rewarded them handsomely by the absurdity of it.
Must I endeavor to my dutiful station of the law, all by my lonesome?
Marshal Matuzik seemed to share his employer's frustration, but being dead, even this magistrate should have to ask the question, is it lawful? A lawful man of justice would have to ask questions. The corpse, with the appearance that lacked nothing but a burial, asked itself none. It only stared.
We would sooner you beat him into the courtesy of a submission rather than bear further installments of his obstinacy.
Theatrical demons of hard-hearted scorn. Since you remain there, cursed by the mask of your melodramatics, I find you all of tragic character, that not even one of you can perceive that such is the nuisance of your obnoxious role-playing. Long since over.
You'll have your bonus on top of the bounty, but first, lynch this forest raven!
Stand fast. Abstain from the persecution of that man. Unless this wayfaring heathen presents a stronger case of his heresy, then let no man among you decide his fate.
Why is the high priest only now bringing in this rule of authority?
Regarding the station of this powerful and solemn figure, the mob, desperate as they were, bore back from the man who carried death in a single verdict, and it seemed as if care of his commission was now to be administered before them.
Do any of you doubt that I am the cardinal's eyes of all France, of all investigations? Do any of you dare argue with what I know of the law, of interrogation or jurisdiction? Pronounce your name, trade, and origin, wayfarer, and then we'll advance appropriately to the preference of your religion.
Inspector Dory, I pay you a compliment. Your own trade of deceptions are most artfully conducted. But in your disguise, I might understand you to be a soldier or a monk, an investigating agent of a warring faction, or a Puritan of righteous indignation. Or is it an ambitious exhibit of schizophrenia that has you rallying upon all your performances, as if hoping to bring into the spectacle of our vision the ultimate woman?
It was obvious up till now that the inspector had assumed that there was no greater occupation than his.
Monsignor Dory, noble inspector from the court of the good cardinal. Why permit this man to insult you with his insane machinations? It only serves to harbor resentment towards you and our superiors.
Major General, in seeing your personage through that notorious masquerade of medals permits me to imagine in you every infirmity known to the Christ. For our Lord's sake, must you look so sharp, the murderer? Surely by now, sir, you would have grown nauseated, playing such pranks upon your true identity.
I will not permit contemptuous slander of my esteemed colleagues' integrity. Least mine, voice to my ears, standing with integrity to all. You, sir, have warranted your demise. My humility will not serve to carry me lower. This obtrusive one has insulted us all. And me, an honored, decorated soldier of war?
Your Lacaste. In due respect to my station, sheath your sword, sir. And you other judicial agents, who, save your vocation, seem all the more lawless. Adhere to my directive. Not one drop of blood from this oddly defiant wayfarer shall be spilled before my sanction. And unless his verses of acclamations be discerned as heresy, then you will allow this one to further his speech.
Pray forgive this seeming impertinence, your gracious excellency. This commoner is but a highwayman who slanders all our oaths.
Remove my steed! Upon my word, your holy excellency, I ask your pardon, but this matter lies between me and this region. Is that not so?
And what security do you have to defend your position? Are you to stake your reason against such a reputation as mine? One effort will I make to save thee, but beware of ingratitude. For indeed, I touch not heretics, except with a torch. And if I am again ridiculed by your slander, then my vengeance shall equal my brotherly compassion.
Monsieur Dory, left alone residing in the desert of your ego, the profession it has chose for you has left you bone dry of life's celebration. As it is for now, one blade of grass makes for you a meadow. 2 blades in a week's journey, an oasis. A lone prairie flower, your own is shade. And if you, war monk of persecution, were to come to a forest, there would be no more evidence of timber left to be found than those stakes you used to burn your heretics as an offering for those righteously indignant masters.
It seems you would provide some diversion to me on this most gloomy day, to have the Monsignor toast you and your religion on one of his fiery spits.
It matters not who this insolent wretch is. It's the indifference he displays of our commissions. Why has his oral abuse, long since tolerated, not manifest a torch in spite of his religion?
Your zeal does make you presumptuous and unmannerly, and since your ravings have altogether excited my suspicions, you will not be permitted to leave this vicinity until your true identity has been rendered satisfactory to my discernment of its intrigue.
Still a captive to the assembly's shadow, the stalker of heretics thought now to light up the dull place he had since inhabited.
I have no manner of inclination to route my name out to the countryside, but what brings me here is another story, and it's something you should care to hear. So I'll sing it to the tune of your heart, so that she may be the first to hear.
Okay then, monsieur. Then what is actually your work?
The sun rises at the break of day. A raindrop falling into the sea merges with the ocean. The soul Aaron's presence spreads awareness to the far corners of the earth. Thus, Monsignor, it is not work at all. Where I go and what I do is of little import to the present purpose. But if I should free one of you, you'd have reason to think of me as the best friend you've ever had. And whether I tell you from whence I came or where I go, or whether it is my pleasure to walk the sun's light or dance the moon's shine, are pleasures you need not concern yourself of their pleasantries. For I am in no hurry to answer questions from those I meet here below. However, upon this plain you, war monk, being half monk and half soldier, dare I say which one is the more friendlier? You I will oblige in exchanging some dialogue.
Yes, it is nice for you to at last be upon this earth, and to meet you as well. But what of your religion? Or shall I say, which mischievous cult do you belong?
All a truly religious man could ever want to be is to become love. However, it seems to me that everyone has laid aside the music of life celebration, tackling such profoundly useless questions as yours. Under this ridiculous exploitation, you, war monk, should know better than to ask such a reproachful question. For are you not one who has grown ill, guarding and preserving nothing? Now there is a shameful question worth discussing.
Seems to me, upon this accursed day, you might depart the biggest fool of your cult.
True religion has nothing to do with cults, least organizations. The moment you organize the truth, you enslave it. A bird on wing is one thing. You can catch a hold of that same bird and put it in a golden cage. Outwardly it appears the same bird, but inwardly it has lost its freedom. Thus it has lost its freedom of expression. It has lost its joy in the sun, flying beyond the clouds. Losing its sky and space, how can it live the truth? Now the only truth of the bird is that it has become a slave. Yes, it will have its food and water, but how can the vastness of the sky be compared to a golden prison?
I must admit, I rather admire the man's ingenuity. With a box of esoteric trinkets from some ancient mystery school, and a few philosophical contrivances, he has made out to have a mystic's temple of grand sentiments. It seems, indeed it is, an unfashionable piece of boldness to venture around here, so brash in our midst, with such a trade.
To the monk in command, the stranger seemed too like another man in command. His articulation could not be like those of any present there, with scowls and guns. The necessity of being irate over the abortion of hanging the man had put the hanging judge's blood pressure into an all-time high. But even now more so, when it was sternly suggested that his number one killer's tone of voice be suppressed into mute delivery by the high priest imposing his cardinal's snare. His blood simply boiled right over.
Strangely, you are rather a clever sort of man.
I'm the sort of man the Creator made me. I don't set myself up to be a sheep of any religious dogma. After all, so what of religious denominations? So what of religious distinctions? So what of their insignificant candle of light when held before the radiance of the sun? And so it was with the best of gratitude that I left behind your religion and its empty boast of faith. For I was salvaged to remember when I had no religion at all, when all I had was God. Remaining dependent upon others for their borrowed understanding will never serve your divine nature to become authentic. And without authenticity, you will never know the great spirit that resides within you. Military monk, the excess of internal reverie produce only men like yourselves. Men of anxiety, steeped with tension. Subsequently, your banishment from the harmony of universal stillness is because you remain steadfast in not knowing that in such the stillness, the majesty of God is. Monsignor, stop looking for God far away. That is a sure way to miss such the presence.
I am not to tolerate the witnessing of this utter nonsense spoken, not for a moment longer.
I quite agree. Know that I take you irrefutably for a rogue, not for a counselor or my conscience keeper. And since I know there's such a scoundrel in my district, you may count on my posse keeping an eye on you day and night.
If you bring your beleaguered soul into the parameters of this countryside, you will feel the sting of my men's whips.
Obviously, the conclusion these noxious creatures had reached without any consciousness of guilt was more the offspring of denial than reason. The heretic stalker was now left alone with perhaps the last person he would have ever expected, the soul stalker.
You have greatly inconvenienced me in front of my constituents. Therefore, if you linger here much longer in this countryside, I shall find some astounding way for you to depart from even your shadow. The path you took in here shall serve for your departure. Now, when I leave, I expect you to be up and gone.
A tale of June. The green sea of meadow unfolds. Xavier, on hoof again, thought it appropriate for a morning ride along the dilapidated wooden fence that he had helped his father put up when he was yet a boy. For now, the embarrassing interrogation of that wayfarer and vagabond was behind him, so he concluded. Justly united again with the equitable balance of an appointed man upholding canon law, his ego rationally made it quite evident to him that the compromise of censoring the borders for heresy was of a necessity, as he entertained his station by peculiarities of a strange perception that he was still doing God's work. In fact, of this fashionable mischief he had concocted, his ego was appeased and thus restored the vitality sought for the time being, no matter what the strange vagabond had said. Hence, as the cuteness of the vagabond's accusations began to die away, or as time began to obliterate the freshness of the alarm, it was again succeeded by an artificial sense of accomplishment, for Xavier's examination of conscience began to grow back into a thing of alarming proportions. After all, he was realizing he was indeed the heretic stalker of the Cardinal's Council of Investigations, far into national recognition and therefore rightly in position to hunt them down and to exterminate them completely, if even to the extent of their religion's extinction. All this vulgar consideration was being intensely contemplated by an esteemed religious man of the cloth on a Christian Sabbath morning, in the midst of a breathtaking valley, on a glorious sun-drenched day of peaceful repose. Xavier rode in the sunshine, disregarding it, while his bravado carried him further away from tranquility, perjuring the supreme excellence of this celebrated existence. It may have all started from the tragic loss of his childhood sweetheart at the tender age of 9, who drowned at sea. His family and the Duke of Tripoli, her father, had made an honest exertion to find the ship's passengers, but to no avail were the 63 bodies recovered from the deep Atlantic, where the sailing vessel had gone down. It seemed Xavier's life since the time of her departure was infinitely remote, on the other side of a shadow. The attachment to her was this solemn man's oppression, which mingled as a bitter sense of loss encompassed in his personage a demeanor of desolation. Since 22 years he had allowed himself to be alone in the world. Consequently, any other tender emotions of his youth from that day forth seemed lost in the abyss.
Mademoiselle, would you move your horse from the path?
Whether she had been blown in onto the meadow by the wind, or had simply floated down by a cloud, no mere human could tell, for she did not seem disposed to answer the superficial. And there was something besides in her countenance and stature that put a stop to all questioning. In fact, she seemed to have come out of nowhere, save on the condition of ruling there.
Monsieur, know that in the skies where I fly, angelic hosts speak of our re-encounter, though you ride in the lowest threshold of existence, and therefore in the most dangerous valleys, among the righteously defiled, amidst the triumphant tyranny of Christian imperialists.
Why this persecution? Perhaps it was his lifetime of lies. It will be remembered that the entire scene could be seen from the window of heaven. After all, he was in a church military coat, of course, and a mighty fine in its decadence. But we could not avoid to shudder when we think how little that those medals and that sword would avail him if he were caught and flung into a casket and dumped in a hole, an instigator of men's torments, a rebel to the Christ, and obviously a condemned murderer of men.
You call those credentials? I consider those vices an abominable joke.
The cardinal's inspector in him was struck by these disagreeable words and requested the speaker to take notice of his eminent reputation, that he was of the cardinal's agency, a charge of delegated diplomacy which the disturbed state of the country had imposed upon him, and which he would gladly support if it need be by the payment of his life. He was about thus far with it when his spirit very much overcame with a sense of realization and shunned the stupidity of it.
You know of no courage but what belongs to the sword, no bounty or virtue but that deemed worthy by a church? I tell thee, foolish monk of rule, that you are famished of heart, absent of life, and bloody of hand. It is from that eternal sphere that I have descended upon this chase, to exploit your audacious pride and reclaim your heart's longing. For there are no other options for your soul than for me to fall from the sky. For the other servant whom has sent me hither now demands your presence.
She suddenly burst forth with her horse into a gallop. Our military monk had never been referenced with such expressions from a lady's tongue. And such was her sovereignty as she seemed to ride the wind that it would have not mattered if they each had ridden a different horse, or if it was a different day, for the confidence with which this mysterious enigma pushed her four-legged phantom forward was no other than spirit.
Might you have known my soul's vow by whisper of your heart's memory? O heart of stone and hand of iron, spare yourself of these burdens and retrieve what was once yours.
Such was the account whispered by the wind in Xavier's ear, no less by the narrator, the Meadow Maiden. The moon had come under the sun of the morning meadow, leaving not so much a name behind her. In despair he would sigh, for in the absence of her light his monasteric torch would never be so bright. It seemed as if he worshipped her in his own way, taking a few oral cuffs to his integrity. But when the childness was gone from his sensibility, he indeed felt a dark void in his heart. He ordered within his consciousness that no sentiment should ever speak of her again, but regretted not when his memory disobeyed. No one was quite sure who belonged to the cloister, since nearly all its members denied its existence. But everyone knew who did not belong. Before us, we may gaze upon one of its more dreadful members, of whose popularity was with the vengeful, and thus had long since established the absolute demise of his personal integrity. Tampering in the nation's courts with rules laid down strictly for heresy, he had since besought, as was his ritual, the allegiance of his dear friend, the magistrate Duclaw. The errand they were together upon to eliminate all such radicals of church and state offered in itself a very strong incentive, that of getting rid, once and for all, any nuisance they thought to eliminate. Here the agenda where they sojourned promised never the dispensation of impunity, but the consequence of a murder.
So, the rumor is true. Word of this affair has reached the ears of your sacred establishment.
Be careful, my friend. Do not add scandal to your embarrassment of your rival taking over your jurisdiction.
It is because of his interruptions the charlatan got away. How can you expect me to do my nation's business with such an indecisive man? Your Holy Excellency, my compulsion to exterminate the heretic would have been justified as compensation for his ravings of blasphemy. I pride myself in ridding the earth of heretics and draft dodgers by washing their iniquities away in their own blood. Would you grant me the commission of doing so?
But of course, Magistrate Duclaw. However, I will not put this immaculate hand at signing Inspector Dory's demise. I would suggest a worse accident befall him, which must be clearly distinguished as such. His cardinal's appraisal of this incident must bear no suspicion of foul play.
This obscurity desired and calculated upon by the judge and the church diplomat was to give an accident a corpse to hide their paranoia of this nuisance known as the cardinal's chief inspector. Imagine if Xavier's own cardinal would have uncovered this. He would have spied out this matter of offense and put to the stake revenge upon them all, as he himself was still a man rather indifferent of turning his other cheek. Diabolical in his underhandedness of making an accident out of a murder, the worst of all the cardinals went on to claim a superiority of a deeper kinship with the devil to his judicial ally.
Then bring what's left of his body to us, and we shall provide a formal burial, which to his superior shall present us as most clean. As to the heretic the inspector allowed to escape, that he may not display and preach his filthy sermons to the righteous, have your good sheriff give him the lashes he deserves. Then hang him bodily upside down by his feet for 3 days, so that all may know the consequence of heresy. Only this much must be publicly known.
And if he should live through this punishment, your Holy Excellence?
Pendez-le sur le même arbre dont vous l'avez sicuré par les talons.
But of course, then hang him from the same tree that held him secure by his heels.
On the miserable business of revenge that would now follow, everybody was aroused in anticipation for the coming event. To be present at executions is the magistrate's positive duty. For him and his constituents, no festival is equal to the execution ground. Surprising, such a strange antidote would be considered a form of entertainment for their impoverished little world, where they enjoyed remaining hidden in secrecy of an abomination. As Xavier rode onwards, he came upon a place where an old adventure lay, and though the sight was of a childhood enchantment, it seemed the furthest destination conceivable to his mind. And thus, being sentimental in remembrance, it was for Xavier a harbor for the soul. However, set off by so many sacred little memories, its effect was all the same heart-wrenching. For the first time in almost 22 years, he had dared confront this enigma, the tomb of 99 wishes. Resentful in the past, he had cursed the tomb, insulted the saints within, and blasphemed the myth. Now, despite of these chastisements, it seemed his lonely heart had drawn him there. Staring where they had once slept, the stone tomb seemed to have escaped the erosion of time. His grief had not. Just as the engraved inscription on the tombstone read, the tomb of 99 wishes. His soul's little one was also engraved in his memory. He felt empty and affirmed it on that slippery descent of self-pity, of which a man plagued by by old sorrows and recent contradictions, there is no rest except exhaustion. Not in vain did this man turn his head upward, for there, in the sad darkness of his humbleness, a multitude of angelical voices spoke softly in the heavens, and what repentance he had forgotten to say, they completed. Indeed, his open cry was perfumed with humbleness. Many actions which seem cruel are from not knowing this deep and mysterious relationship. The cloud weeps, then the garden sprouts. The baby cries, then the mother's milk flows. These things make us grow. At the time, it was impossible for Xavier to be struck with this mystery. Obviously, he was overborne with self-pity, and perhaps we too should be passionate not for Xavier alone, but for the sons and daughters of mankind. Although Xavier could never depict the darkness upon his soul during this fleshly journey, love has been here all along, which I dare say is eternal. From this ageless summit of love, there is an eternal promise to our souls, never to relinquish the love of her, hence affording everyone a pretext for discovering their divinity. Obliterating all immoralities of our indifference to the truth of life, may we open our eyes despite they are closed. Sacred was his encroachment against the tomb, for he decided to lie upon it through the night again, hoping in at least a dream she would kiss his cheek. In the light of this compassion, the child within the man has finally prayed again upon the stone, as we are made witness to this dream. With the resolute of a bold challenger of destiny, Xavier had since pressed forth in search of the enigma.
I feel as if she is near. The hoof prints in the sand tell me so.
When he perceived the log and stone chalet which was before him in a clearing.
And if she was not convinced of my authority before, then surely now she shall be convinced of my glory.
As Xavier drew towards the entrance, he found the door was not bolted. In fact, it was ajar. Perhaps for the grand reason of posterity, the entity from the tomb had unbolted it, but even more so, with a look and manners of one whose brow nature had written, "You were once a heavenly king." Perhaps it was she herself who had left open the door.
Luckiest of men, Xavier, a friendly counsel. Do not betray love. I issue a grand proclamation to the enemy of love, whether Xavier takes conscience of it or not. He is about to have everything. Congratulations, my boy. I can even hear the drumming of your own heart.
Are you to impress upon me that you would take favor in such an arrangement? Is it that you are stubbornly blind, monsieur, or can you not see clearly that I am but an obedient celibate and soldier of the cross?
Come now, boy. Your need for hypocrisy ceased when my daughter showed you where your heart's current flows. And you cannot deny I would have to be daft not to take this opportunity to remind you of your God-gifted nature.
You, monsieur, remain absolutely blind to my ordained station of consecration, and in a peculiar fashion you readily ridicule its authority when given the chance.
For the love of denial, are you sure to retreat to a station that thou art but a holy man? Please, step away from the window. The glare coming from the sun's rays are intensely reflecting off all those campaign medals, which represents that you are an indisputable connoisseur of liberty's relentless pursuit of greed, lust, lies, envies, and hatred. Let us be fair. It is not my fault that their annoying reflections is a severe cause of my blindness to your righteous and most holy profession.
As for your invasion of insults and imprudent assessments to my military career, at least my pious station of authority, that I should now hold you directly accountable for those audacious commentaries that they express. They contain within them more than a condemned man's insult, a blasphemy.
As I do not pray to be admitted into the mystery of your forlorn career, be not offended that I ridicule the costume that you wear. Why are you so obstinate into being tricked into thinking that it is you who is speaking? Since you have dressed well for a contest of madness, you cannot plead rightly that you are of Christ. War monk, since all your acting has amounted to an unlucrative expenditure of waste, why not toss the disguise and remain naked before God in the absolute? Know, as I stand here before you, that any war is a relentless combination of hideous political ambitions and church fanaticism, that any country's code for invasion is an abomination before Christ, that your sheep are asleep in the pews while their religious shepherds and militant politicians are merely warmongers, that any revolution that comes out of a war ends up to be but a reformed hypocrisy, and that you, Xavier, as a Christ representative, is a violation on all humanity, which all in all introduces its enormous sum total of criminality as a standard of triumph.
I see. Besides being blasphemous to the church, your voice accents a treason most shocking to the nation. Religious and political sensibilities of my contemporaries shall surely order your annihilation.
I greatly doubt the menace of your bluff, priest. Fickle Christian, if you do not scruple the words of the Christ, then are you really a Christian? Or are you merely an impostor, unknowingly in an allegiance with a placebo organization whose eye for an eye policy has yet to be outdated by the Christ Gospels of love thy brother?
Like the wild daisies that dance to the breeze's melody along a footpath, the difference of race and color are nothing less than the variegated beauty of flowers, all coexisting in harmony on this earthly garden. If they were all of the same variety, would it not become quite common to the eye? Does the rose not open its heart, lending her fragrance to any passerby without discrimination? In the Creator's oneness that has no opposite, they remain neither vain nor embarrassed, neither prideful or shameful, neither ambitious nor fearful. Living in this dominion of the Creator, their fragrance remains unconditionally for all. Correspondingly, are not all these varieties drenched and refreshed by the spring's radiant shower, revived from the breeze from the east, invigorated under the splendor of one sun? O heart of man, come and learn the rainbow colors of God's countenance. Flowers have no arguments. They are simply there dancing silently in the love of creation. It does not matter whether it is a rose, a carnation, or a wild daisy. The only thing that matters is that it blossoms into its totality. Whatever has been hidden of them has become reality. Wherewithal, when you realize that you too are adorned in this garden's pageantry, such the fragrance will bring an immaculate blossoming as you have returned anointed in the perfume of creation. There is an eternal presence, an infinite power, and a prolifically beneficent intelligence that is love. Not someone who loves, but simply is love. Love is not just the ultimate reality. Such is the beneficence, the only reality. Therefore, let not judgment close the window to this view of Eden by the persistence to divide and separate one from the whole of love. After all, the one who has bestowed this exuberant source of oneness in all things has flourished this enchantment upon the plain to set ablaze your being. Indeed, in such oneness, the restricting veil of judgment is dropped, and in that blessed wisdom Eden becomes realized again. Hopefully, such an innuendo may blossom a holy intervention.
What insinuations has this heathen impressed upon me? How comes it then that under his shield of the cross, that he has made me out to be heathen? Well, whoever you are, monsieur, so far, you only seem to see the devil in me.
Forgive me, dear child, I have forgotten my hospitable courtesies. Come hither, for there is surely a reservation of your seat. After all, locked in my bosom is that I won't hold any of these foul things against you. Before us, the intention of destiny was to put two of God's children in strong contrast with each other. One prominent in church hierarchy, prudently righteous, filled also with the pride of once being a nation's distinguished military officer. The other, provided with a grand consciousness to know the presumptuous and menacing theatrics of all such social mass, impeccably beholding to the virtues of the heart, reverencing and loving the calibration of the whole of life, and unyielding to a man's vices only by the strength of his profound relationship to the Creator, while still trying to foster those same virtuous qualities in the one who may be too socially conditioned to distinguish or understand the forthcoming redemption in his favor. There is someone else dear to me who wishes again to make your acquaintance. I will refrain from further harassing you.
Pacify yourselves, good sirs. May the glory of peace not depart from this home. Thank Providence there is no genuine fighting, merely the bickering of schoolboys. Only some fool has given one of you a gun. Forgive my interruption, Father, but while you have surely reverenced this man with such ungracious language in hopes to free him from the pitfalls of the religious dogma to which he is so dangerously acquainted, may we please relax in harmony?
You are correct, daughter.
You know, it astounds me as well as fascinates me how you would keep such a rare antiquity as an ornament on your wall.
I would be obliged if you would approach your point candidly.
The candid point, monsieur, which I need scarcely tell you, is that if that Severn sword is in fact not a replica, that it belongs in the War Museum of Parliament. Such is the endorsed caliber of steel that it stands beyond doubt of the highest query of a swordman's ambition. I would make good with my commission, and a hangman's noose against any gainsayers or perpetrators of its integrity. Not to fear, nor would it be that I should report its findings to the War Board. Such is assured of my confidentiality. Never will the commission hear of such. Still, however, even if the rare circumstance availed itself that you were a peddler or merchant and had found it in a spoil of war, it would be your best interest and certainly one's obligation to the men who fought so gallantly to have turned it in, sir. Do as my cardinal himself would bid you. Go on straight ahead with your story of how you obtained it, and do not go off into curves or detours, for proof after proof is needed, or if we are to establish a straight road back for its confiscation. Are you now not of reluctant anxiety to profit from this relic? In fact, I should employ the legal constraints of any sale with the personal satisfaction of its confiscation.
My, oh my, enough is enough. Let my father's buccaneer sword alone. It is not a wise thing for the Cardinal's wolf or any deputy dogs of the law to ever meddle with.
Over-insolent one. Painful is the vulgarity needed to converse with a loving one so ignorantly arrogant that I yield my spiritual abode.
Your annoying utterances are to be trod down, as your sacrilegious gibberish is a personal discomfort to my ears.
As I shall now be forced to light a torch, while my history will blow out your candle. Those confounded ornaments of which you speak so highly of are only there as a remorseful reminder to myself that I too was an ignorant warmongering entity. And though I stalked heinous tyrants, hoping to obliterate all their dissenting forms of racial prejudice, remained it yet an imbecile, a despicable barbarian who bathed himself with the consolation of their tears and blood. Forget the existing corruption that I fought against. I was yet still an inferior being who wore the blood-stained cloak of a liberator, and who found hate and revenge my solace for the men who despised the color of my skin. And like you, hidebound war monk, I laid siege upon this plain as I thought myself nobly vindicated by reason of action, the pursuit of equality for the human kind. Your boast is your intimate historical knowledge of this Servandonian sword. Yet in your distorted little world, you'd never imagine that this old man that's seated before you was once his aspiring protege, and that very sword was once his. Indeed, after my mother's massacre, the Mother Superior of a Quebec convent who adopted me, cultured me in 3 languages through my boyhood years. However, this tutelage did not happen without an exchange of privilege for my consent, that the man who loved her, Francois Servandonio, would also educate me in his art of the sword.
I now realize who you are, or should I say who you once were. You are he, still alive, still breathing the life of a legend. You are that fugitive warrior whose fame is widely known, not only in New France, but throughout the highway of the seas. And indeed, the minute I landed at the military academy, I heard of so many of your exploits that my heart at once told me you were the man I ought to be. Do tell, dear sir, are you not the Indian of the Americas? Are you not the savage of the seas, Manhaika? Your disguise of being a penniless rogue all these years after has truly been a tavern keeper's tale. You were marked for mortification, from an abandoned child of massacre to a slave in captivity. Nonetheless, your insurrection was indeed a moral phenomenon.
Classifying any murderous conduct as something heroically noble is as ancient as sin. Shall I hand down this cursed disgrace to humanity, exonerated by the way it pierces flesh? Now we shall not talk about this mischief any longer, for I shall not bind another man to the mischief I once had become.
Father, please, just tell him who he truly is.
Accordingly, in each one of us, we have a secret blossoming, which should have never ever become a secret at all. The great ancientness of your self-identity has been pushed aside until all has been forgotten, because we are all grand spirits trying to learn to live in the flesh. We again come upon this plane of existence through the cycle of death and rebirth. Unfortunately, every time we re-enter this fleshly plane of survival, we are misled to forget our divinity. Awakening from our spiritual amnesia, of course, will be a great challenge, but will surely be a mystical treatise with God.
Though esoteric in its nature, there are, in fact, Christian mystics of my faith that do believe that we are spirits in the flesh.
Do not escape realizing this. It is the greatest phenomenon in the whole of creation. It is a process of an emerging realization of your true identity.
Once you discover you're not accidental to existence, once you discover that you are existence itself, life takes a tremendous leap into creation. The dignity, the beauty, and the glory of mankind in full relationship with the Creator are the blossoms of an evolved consciousness. It is the authenticity of being which has become the myth in these unscrupulous times. We are the church, the career, the country, the soldier, the preacher, the scholar, the pupil, the tribe, and out of these things we derive who we think we are. Indeed, the collective mind of the multitude wears a mask. It is imposed from the outside. It has no interior definition of its essential being.
This masquerading has become the habitual definition of who you think you are.
Your ego, Xavier, is derived from others, and it depends on others to bear witness as to who you are, during which the ego needs society to exist, and thus, caught in the web of exchange, needs society's approval. Meanwhile, because of this, your true potentiality remains untapped, while you wear the many masks for the collective crowd's acceptance. And though the multitude's act is to be rather vague in reflection to what I'm saying, its whole innovation has subsequently sent their soul's divine right of being in a spiral decline, far below the firmament's door, where she would have normally entered without a disguise to participate in Eden's celebration.
Dearest Savior, still wearing many a mask, you do nothing about returning home.
Know that these masks the egos wear are theatrical creations that can be dropped for the sake of one's authenticity. However, for the masses, anything that delivers you beyond their masquerade is utterly meaningless. For them, there is no awareness of even a problem. Meanwhile, the trees go on growing without being taught or having the falsity of a disguise. Nature knows nothing except this very moment. Nature knows nothing about being in masquerade. For that matter, having futuristic hopes, desires, and wants, which destroy the very gift of the here and now. This delusion is a great cause of man's preoccupation towards worldly endeavors, and has denied him the wine chalice from the eternal tavern of union which exists profoundly in the heavens as well as the earth.
Beware of yourself floating in this lie. For those who preach complacency that the kingdom of God is in some far-off place lull themselves and others into a deep coma.
To speak the truth of the ultimate consciousness would be to swallow up all the philosophies into a superior and final theology. Love. Allow this verdict to transform your life as you have found this home by following your heart. Xavier, I abstained from murdering a slave curator in Madagascar, only for the privilege of adopting a child who had been lost at sea.
I was found adrift, floating at sea on a plank. Have you come across this emerald sea on your white camel?
I believe you both to be more acquainted. I dare say lesser personages should enter the servants' store.
Seize the fugitive!
This is death's door. More meat for my dog. I knew we were going to find him. Is that much bounty? Do I get to kill him? Be careful with him.
You stop now! I insist you stop at once. Can't you see that this man is a hero of France?
Silence, priest! So you think your rival jurisdiction over the prey is a thing I would ever forget?
You mean in the middle of a war, you of a French ethnicity would actually sell my hide to the British?
I will cut your tongue out, you contemptible savage!
So you thought to rid this world of tyranny, huh? Gentlemen, we will make a fine profit from his staff.
As long as I'm alive, you shall never see that profit.
In this nightmare of madness, I promise you both will come out of it unharmed.
Remove this primitive for execution!
No!
Sit him up!
Since you are worth as much dead or alive, we won't burden ourselves with your existence.
You infatuated war creature, the stench of your breath will truly be my last punishment.
I now, sir, deliver you to hell.
Stop! Stop, you old fool! You're disfiguring him! Our bounty!
You've totally lost your sanity. You've compromised his identity. He is mad. He ruined the bounty. We have more business to do. What? Oh. Here, drink with children. Your daughter and Xavier are on this slab of stone.
Are they all right? My darling, I've been the night all too worried. I won't let you go abroad. If I cannot stand one single night in your absence, then I dare not allow you departing for years or a single month away from home.
You should pray that your parents don't give you a lashing and a beating as I would.
Mr. Jobs, you have fired me once, you will never fire me again.
Upon this demonstration celebrated and accomplished there under the satisfied eye of the Creator, the great lover was so impressed with this little one that he kissed his life's future that very moment. On this tombstone of 99 wishes, we are made witness to two children who now, drenched in the consciousness of light, had awakened to no better recollection than this very moment where 100 wishes have been fulfilled.